The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Welcome back to the Secrets of Technology podcast. I'm Kim Commando, America's digital goddess, and I never miss an episode.
You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hello there.
And Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hello there.
So, we all have to do the Obi-Wan. Hello there.
That's
that's your
standard for me anymore.
So, let's get right into things this week because we get a full agenda, and we've got some great feedback, two different bits of feedback from listeners, and I want to get to their questions right up front. The first bit of feedback harkens back to our recent episode when we talked about Kindle tips and tricks, our best and favorite Kindle tips and tricks that we wanted to offer. And so R on YouTube asks, is there a good Catholic Bible for the Kindle? I'm thinking something that makes good use of Kindle features. For me, it would be for personal reading rather than study. And that's a good question. There are a bunch of Bibles that Amazon offers in Kindle versions. And there are some study Bibles and regular Bibles. Now, most Catholics will usually choose the New American Bible. I prefer the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition translation. There's different, the Bible's in Greek and Hebrew, and then it gets translated into English, and it's different emphases are done differently. That's what different translations are. So Revised Standard Version, there was a different set of translators. It gets complicated. Trust me, I've been working on that for a long time.
So one of the points on that is the New American Bible is the translation that you hear at Mass.
Exactly.
So if you want to stay with that translation, go with the New American Bible. I also, like you, Dom, for personal prayer, prefer the Revised Standard Version, the Catholic edition.
I kind of like the language. It feels more majestic and less pedestrian at times. Well, in that case, I like and have long used as the Kindle version, the Ignatius Bible. And it works on Kindle fine. It looks just like the books. You can do highlighting, and you could do the word definitions, and you can do notes and all that sort of stuff. So it takes advantage of all the regular Kindle features on it, and so it's inexpensive. Less than a paperback version would be anyway. So. Pat, did you have a particular one that you liked?
Well, I went with the New American Bible because I wanted to have, so I could be prepared for the Sunday Mass readings and I wouldn't be saying, oh, wait a minute, why did they say that?
Right.
That type of thing. So it's real common, but the I don't remember, I forgot to look up the price, but it works really well on the Kindle. It's fine.
Yeah, and most of these will be relatively around the same price, around $10 or $15, somewhere around there. And they have all the things that the print versions have, like the footnotes and the maps and that sorts of things. I had to be honest, and I didn't say this in our Kindle episode, but one of the downsides of the Kindle readers is when it comes to maps and illustrations, because it's all grayscale, and so you can't see any color if they have color. Because it gets kind of small and cramped, and there are ways to make to expand things like magnify, but it's really kind of janky, honestly. And I often will open up the book on my iPad at the same. I prefer reading on the Kindle, but I'll open up the book on the iPad in the Kindle app there just so I can look at the color illustrations. So that you'll have the same issue with maps and other illustrations that might be in a Bible. So there's that. The only other thing I would mention is our friends over at Verbum. They have the Catholic Bible Study software. Now, you specifically said it's for personal reading, not study. So this may not be for you. It's definitely a little more expensive, but you're getting a whole library of not just Bibles and multiple Bible versions, but you'll also be getting Bible references and study books and all kinds of stuff like that for what you get with that. But that's also something to check out. It's not on Kindle. That's another key. It's only available either on a phone, a tablet, or desktop. So just something to keep in mind. Excellent. And if anyone out there has a version of the Bible, a Catholic Bible for Kindle that they like, maybe do a Reams if there's a good one out there. I don't know of one, but if there is one, or there's some other versions, translations of the Bible that Catholics use, we'd love to hear from you. All right, that said, let's move on to our other listener question. This comes from an email from Bill. Bill says, I have an older laptop with Windows 7 Pro Service Pack 1 still running on it. The performance is great, but Microsoft has stopped pushing out updates. I'm hesitant to purchase Windows 10, given my prior experience accepting the free upgrade from 7 to 10 on another laptop, which ruined the performance. Is it okay to continue running Windows 7, or is the 10 upgrade, which I'm not entirely sure my hardware will support, a must? Perhaps it's time to finally take that Linux jump, he says. So, Pat, I think you're our Windows user here. So I'm going to first throw the
Windows user.
Yeah, I'm going to throw the Windows question to you, but I also want to talk a little bit about, running obsolete Mac OS and other issues related to it. But maybe you could address the crux of Bill's question on whether he should upgrade from 7 to 10 or do something else.
Well, I go through this with a lot of my clients all of the time because they love their Windows 7 machines, and it's, they've been good workhorses for all this time, and they hate giving it up, and they've heard awful things about Windows 10. Having said all that, number one, if the machine is greater than 4 or 5 years old, it's time for a new machine because the hard drive is going to die, the power supply is going to die, the video card is going to die. One of those things is going to render it obsolete anyway. And your data could be at risk if you haven't done a good job of backing up. The second thing is that even if you said, I want to do it anyway, you cannot officially get a copy of Windows 10 for an older machine anymore free. So you would be talking about, if you were trying to dot your P's, I's, and cross your T's, having to pay a fairly good-sized amount for Windows 10. And the third thing is even if you, number one, circumvented the legalities of it and found a way to upgrade it, the drivers are probably going to kill you, because I have had people that even did the upgrades fairly early on, and now they try to do an upgrade to the latest version of 10, and they've been upgrading all along, and all of a sudden a hard drive driver doesn't work, or a video driver starts causing their machine to blue screen, or you can't get printer drivers for that old printer, which that means you may have to buy a new printer as well. And especially if you have an old scanner, on when you do an upgrade to do a little bit of a jump to a new OS, you're often in danger of losing that ability to use the old scanner. So I have a few people that keep a Windows 7 machine and it runs, and they use it for scanning and things like that. My caveat is, don't put it on the internet. Let it be only inside the home machine and not get on the net at all, because it's very, very vulnerable to viruses and to exploits, and they will never be fixed. And so that's the biggest thing, is the security issues.
That's the big problem with keeping an old machine running, on an old OS, is the lack of security and the danger of, even if you don't download things, if it's connected to the internet, there are port scanners hitting your ports, and I mean, it's just
even with a firewall,
right?
Yeah,
it's just too dangerous. So but like you said, keeping it offline as a print server or
game machine,
or just to do scanning. Yeah, that's right. Was there anything else?
Well, I ran into something else actually last week. I had a client who was doing the same thing, and all of a sudden, all of their bookmarks and links that they had set up for websites that they went to all the time that were good current, addresses started failing, and it would say, "I'm sorry, I can't get there," because HTTPS is now on by default, and these old links didn't have HTTPS embedded in them. They were still trying to go to the non-secure site, and now the browsers are saying, can't do that. And there used to be an extension that would force it to say, oh, well, just change it over and use that. And I finally found one for her, but the ones that had been out there before that I trusted are all gone and no longer supported.
And this
so
would affect...
it means that
Yeah, everybody.
She would have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. So I usually recommend getting, instead of jumping to Linux, if you're already familiar with Windows 7, you've got less of a learning curve if you just go to Windows 10 and straighten up the start menu so that it means something for you. And I'd always be glad to email with any of our listeners to say, okay, this is how you kind of clean it up a little bit. And then it looks very similar to Windows 7. And then I usually recommend getting a Windows 10 machine with Home with 8 gig of RAM and an i5 or an i7 Intel processor. That seems to be the most compatible machine out there for doing all this. Dell is very good. There are some other ones, but Dell has been serving me and my business associates a long time and seems to last longer. I have a lot more old Dells than I have old HPs or anything else. So that means that they just are tanks.
You could be like Justin Trudeau, just as a tangent, speaking of HP. He got caught, the Prime Minister of Canada got caught online. He was doing some sort of computer Zoom thing, and he had an HP in front of him, and it had an Apple sticker over the HP logo. He was pretending it was a Mac. I just thought it was funny.
That's funny. My Dell had an Apple logo on the back of my Dell laptop for a long time.
That's awesome. So really good. Those are really excellent tips and advice for folks. I want to give a little advice for someone who might be running an obsolete version of Mac OS, and maybe why you would want to run an obsolete version of Mac OS. So on the one hand, it may be just I have an older computer. It still runs all the software I want. It doesn't, it's like Bill was saying, it's not slow. It does what I want. I'm just worried that it's old. And as you said, things will begin to fail. Hard drives have a lifetime, of a few years. I usually say 3 or 4 years. Power supplies, screens, all the hardware will eventually fail. But on top of that, Apple's pretty good about doing security updates for a long time. I'm not sure how it compares with Microsoft, because Microsoft does a good long time as well. But eventually that will stop. But one of the things that really happened is in 2019, when Apple released Mac OS Catalina, that was a dividing line, and where programs that were 32-bit stopped running. And we've talked about this before. And so you would only run 64-bit software. We don't need to get into the difference. It just software that is older and software that is newer, software that's been updated and software that hasn't been updated. And a lot of people had software out there that never got updated. The company that makes it doesn't exist anymore, or something along those lines, or it's too expensive to upgrade and for the things I'm doing with it. So what do I do? So you can try to continue to run an old Mac, and I've seen people do this for years where big companies had a Mac SE in a corner running some old custom software that was vital. They're vital to running their business and that sort of stuff. And it's the same sort of thing. The other option would be if you get software like Parallels or VMware, they're emulation software, and usually Mac users would get it if they want to, say, run Windows on their Mac or Linux. But you can just as well run an Mac OS. And so you kind of like, it's like what's the Russian nesting doll? It's like a Russian nesting doll. I was going to use the echo word. Where you have a Mac OS inside of Mac OS. But so you say you're running Catalina or Big Sur, which is the current version, or whatever Apple's about to announce in about a month. You could have Mac OS Mojave running in emulation and running 30-bit
or Snow Leopard,
or even something older, right? If you can get your hands on it, and there you can. A lot of these, I didn't check, but Apple has a lot of these old operating systems still available for download. I'm not sure all the way back to Snow Leopard, but they're out there.
Not that far back.
Yeah. And again, it's the same concern that you have with running, the old Windows operating systems is security. When Apple stops doing the security updates for that version, you've got to keep it off of the internet. It's just not safe anymore. And I hate that this is necessary, but that's the way we are. With the world we live in, you just can't. And you may also make a point about the unsupported hardware and drivers. Apple has the same problem with Mac OS. Every time there's an upgrade, I don't know what it is about scanners, but some scanners will stop working. Some printers stop working. And then, we have to figure out some kind of workaround. So that's possible that you end up having to do that. But I tell you, Macs, they can run for a good long time, and Apple's really good about making their operating systems backward compatible. So if you have an older Mac, 5, 6, 7 years old, I've got a 5-year-old Mac sitting here that my son uses, and it's got, I think it's got Big Sur on it, the latest operating system. I mean, they can run for a good long time. It's dead right now because the SSD drive died in it. That's a whole nother tale of woe. That's going back for a warranty replacement. But so that's a good point. And then Jack Barazini, who's also a panelist with us, on Secrets Attack, he suggested when I brought it up that if you are, upgrading to new hardware, think about throwing Ubuntu or Ubuntu or Cinnamon Mint, which are all versions of Linux, on that old computer, and either learning how to do Linux or handing it off to a young person who doesn't have a computer and wants to learn how to program in Linux or something along those lines. It's entirely possible to give new life to that old machine.
And the various versions of Linux that you mentioned are actually very user-friendly. You get a CD or you get a install thing, and you go through the install, and there's very little that you have to learn about the innards of the system, because they've really made the update process and everything into a much GUIer method, and you don't have to jump into command line. Now, if you got something fancy, fine, yes, you do. But if you're just trying to get it up to run Firefox or Mozilla and get a word processor and things like that, you can do it pretty easily and not have to know much about it, because if anything goes wrong, you just rerun the install on the next version.
That's right. All right. Anything else we should say about this?
You two covered that really well. Everything that I was going to say, you already covered. So,
Father Reggie, what's your oldest Mac that you've had?
Oh, I think I jumped on board when it was Snow Leopard. So that one definitely rings a bell. It was, so I was in college, and it was, not to make, sorry for all the the
That's
age
okay. We're gonna feel old. Don't worry.
Ageism.
That was roughly 2008, 2009. So I've been on a Mac for 11 years or so, 12 years. Yeah, and I think the only thing that I was going to say was, he asked if it was okay to continue running Windows 7. It is absolutely okay to continue running Windows 7, but you guys made the point that just make sure that it's not connected to the internet. I have a Windows 95 machine downstairs that still runs, but it couldn't connect to the modern internet anyway. It needs a modem and a dial-up connection.
Right. It's safe.
Right. Yeah. Or I guess, I don't know if I'd recommend that, but if it is connected to the internet, just absolutely do not use it for anything that you would be at all concerned if someone were to hack or to steal.
Right.
But that's pretty much anything. Like,
yeah. I found a lot of like church offices, diocesan offices will often have old, outdated machines. And this is a concern that I'm constantly talking about, but it's important to keep up to date on these things. When I went to work for the Archdiocese of Boston, we were still, and this was in 2007, we were running Windows XP still. Mm-hmm. So
I still walk into doctors' offices and see Windows XP running on their reception desk, and I'm saying, oh, please, I hope that's not on the internet. Oh, it's just on our local network. No, it's on the internet.
Yeah.
Some of that is interesting, too, because before I entered seminary, I interned with the coal mines here in Wyoming, and so I was in their IT department. And I'm pretty sure Windows 7 was released by that point, but they were still using Windows XP. And they were still using it because their corporate offices hadn't yet filtered through all the new OS and all the software. And Windows XP was still being supported, but like they couldn't update their computers without permission from the IT office in corporate. And, so some of that is just, it takes businesses a little longer, but at a church, it's more just they're comfortable with an older machine and they
don't have anybody to upgrade it for them.
Right. Right. Yep.
Yeah. And as I remember, we were still in XP. It was still being supported because that was the Vista days and all of that mess.
Nobody
wanted
to go to Vista.
Nobody wanted. Oh, and there was like several versions of Windows back then that nobody wanted until finally. What was it? Was 7 the one that came after Vista? I think.
Yes.
Okay, and finally 7 was the one that people were willing to upgrade to. Yeah, I remember that. I mean, the church is slow to do things. When I started the Archdiocese in 2007, I was told that within they had been using ledger books for accounting within the past 10 years. I think I said this last week, but yeah, so it's the church is slow on the technology, and so that's just the way we are.
Well, and there's another kind of hardware related thing. I had a lot of people who continued to run XP because they were using machines that they were controlling through the Windows XP machines that did not have drivers when you went to Vista or Windows 7 or any of those. So that was a real concern. They had to stay on that, and they just had to make sure they weren't on the internet.
Yeah, and like definitely industrial machines and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
And even on that front too, I know this isn't necessarily directly to his situation, but you also can use Parallels or VMware to emulate older Windows OSs.
Yes.
So
That's true.
You know,
That's true.
if you really like Windows XP, you can emulate that in VMware Player or Parallels, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
You do have to have a legitimate copy of Windows,
right,
that version on CD or something, and that's becoming harder to find.
Right. And you can isolate it within the emulation box. You can isolate it from the internet and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Too.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Very good. Awesome. I think that about covers it. Yeah, Bill, if you have any further questions or any listeners have any further questions on that topic, we'd love to hear from you. We could try to do our best to give you some more information. Before we head on to our next set of headlines we want to talk about, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including Paul S., Brian L., Robert W., Daniel P., and Ben H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So this week, in fact, I think it was yesterday as we were talking, Google had its big spring event. With all the tech companies have their spring events. Google had their Google I/O event, and the general consensus, I think, as we were chatting before the show, was it wasn't all that exciting. Now, it may be that Apple's events are run by marketers, and Google's events are run by engineers, and that's a little bit of the difference. But I mean, there was some things that they announced, new technologies, new initiatives. One of the things I didn't list the headline here, but it recurs to me that they had the announcement that Google is partnering with Samsung to advance the Wear, it's their Watch OS essentially, for their watches, the Android watches. They're partnering with them, so that should help bring more state of the art to Google's watches, in the ones that run Android. So that's good. Anything that kind of jumps out at any of you that was kind of interesting to you from what we saw?
Well, mainly because I do use it a lot is Google Maps. I like, some of there were not huge changes, but they were some nice changes, and they're more traffic-based routing like Waze does and things like that. They've incorporated a lot more of their purchase of Waze into their main product.
Yeah, I like that they're getting into some of the details, things that they're not flashy improvements, but they're more, quality of life sorts of improvements. Like one of the things is a busyness information on a neighborhood level where, the example they say, if it's Saturday morning and you want to explore your city without the crowds bogging you down, maps will tell you the busy hotspots to avoid, like streets near the farmer's market. How is it over there in Laramie, Father? In Laramie, Wyoming?
Well, I just have to laugh because if it's a busy day, it's still going to take me 5 minutes to get across town. Like
those 2 traffic lights, right?
So quality of life for Laramie, it's not really going to do much. But if I do go to Denver, right, then absolutely. In fact, Waze was, I know it's part of Google now, but I mean, I remember using Waze when we would travel as a family. And I was routing Dad around traffic accidents in Kansas City, and like he was impressed.
Yeah.
So this sort of thing is actually even more important, I think, for people with cities that you're not familiar with, places that aren't home, because you usually know where. In my town the farmers market's over there, so I don't go through there on those days.
Yep, or you already know the shortcuts that are going to get you around the busy intersections, and you already know that. Yep.
Yeah. So Yeah, like when I used to live in Salem, Massachusetts in October, I would have loved to have had, these improvements to get me or to reroute me around very localized jams. So that was always a huge problem there for the Halloween stuff. All right, so the Google Maps improvements, those look good. How about you, Father? Anything jump out at you?
It jumped out at me, but not because that I use it, just because I think it's helpful. Is that the I guess it's called the Smart Canvas, the collaboration with using Google Apps, and specifically if you're collaborating on a document, you can have a Google Meet with people you're collaborating with just right there within the Google document. And I thought that was very helpful in our current kind of way in which we're doing work.
It's funny. I mean, I've almost do that now. Like right now with this show, I've got a Google document open next to our Google Meet that we're meeting in.
Yep.
It would be helpful to have that all in one document right there. Yep. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, actually I hadn't connected that specifically, but even when I was hosting the podcast on Secrets of Star Wars with the interview with Vanessa Marshall, I was as we were talking, I was like writing notes to my co-host saying like, we don't have time for this question, we'll come back if we have time.
Right.
And it worked well, but you're right. There's two separate windows.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that. One of the things that kind of I found interesting was this new Material it's hard for me to say. Material U redesign, which it's the design aesthetic of the Chrome, how it looks of the Android device, how it looks. And I think it's a reaction to the whole aesthetic thing with iOS widgets last year, where you could use shortcuts and widgets to really, personalize and change up the way your iPhone looked. And so this one is where the phone will automatically adjust its coloring of the background, based on your wallpaper and other things like that, and so that it creates this more unified look. For a lot of people, it turns out, I think it surprised Apple, Google, a lot of things, that a lot of people really want their phones to have a particular look that is personalized to them, which I think Steve Jobs would be jumping out of his turtleneck if someone proposed that the hoi polloi could decide what looks best.
Changes, yeah.
Yes, but I think we're at the point now where this sort of thing can be done as people are kind of guided within guidelines. So I heard someone say one of the things that they could do is, for example, have it match your phone case. So where I think it was Andy Ihnatko was talking about this in his Material podcast, where you take the case off the phone, take a picture of it, and then so the phone sets all of its visual cues to that tint and color in a compatible way. So the icons and the background and the highlighting and all that stuff would be. It seems frivolous, I guess. What do you think? Is that frivolous?
Well, it's hard to say. I guess the aesthetics of it aren't as important to me, but for someone who's an artist or somebody like that, color is their way they see the world.
Yeah.
And so I can see that they would like more control. And if there's some things like that can be done without making the phone look so different from person to person in terms of function, I'm all for that. It's where that I pick up a phone and I can't tell where the settings are. I can't tell where the apps are. Mostly on Android, because Apple pretty much has standardized things. But so I see where that would give people the chance to say, "Hey, it's personalized," without messing with the structure.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't really think it's frivolous, because I think there's something innate in all of us that wants to assert our individuality, and I don't think that that's bad or wrong in any form. I mean, that's why most of us. Perhaps not all of us, but that's why, a lot of us will get the crazy fun phone cases, not necessarily that we need to assert the fact that I'm unique, but we do that. Like I throw stickers on my laptop, and it's just, I don't know, it makes it feel like home. Yeah. Yep. And there's something there that's like, we don't want to be just one of many. We don't want to be Borgs. We're not just a number or a drone, and I think we sort of do that with our phones and want to make them individualized just because we have them with us all the time. You know,
like
nobody would think to
cars,
do.
too.
Say that again.
Say just like some people do that with their cars because they're always in their car, and that car is an extension of them. And yeah, I can see that now on the phone because that's something that is almost never gone away from you. So yeah.
Yep. You would never have done that with the home landline phone.
Right.
But we will with a phone that is in our pockets all the time.
Oh, you mean you didn't remember the princess phones?
Or the Mickey Mouse phone?
The only sticker I remember on our phone was we had like one of those like 10-10-3-2-1. You dial that first and you get like, I don't know, a discount or something. I don't even remember.
Long distance calling.
I just remember that sticker on it, but that was not to be individualized. That was to remember to dial that so you get a cheaper phone bill.
Well, I was just thinking of the high schoolers. In my high school days, the princess pink phone was a big deal.
Yes.
I never had one of those.
The Mickey Mouse phone. I always wanted one of those when I was a kid where it's Mickey holding up the handset. Yeah. Man, we are dating ourselves. Let's move on. Google Photos is also getting some increased things, some more control over the machine language powered memories, those memory features. One of the things they bring up is say you had a bad relationship, or you just, something happened at a particular time in your life that you don't really want to be reminded of on a regular basis, but you don't want to delete your photos, because deleting photos is I think for me even, is a big deal. Like, I don't like deleting photos, even for things that are sort of mundane, because that seems sort of final, because I have a terrible memory. So if I get rid of a photo, that's like erasing my memory. But I don't necessarily want to be reminded of these things. Even like, I take lots of pictures of food. My wife takes lots of pictures of plants. And like constantly when I have these memory things on, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, or not, Instagram doesn't do memories, but, or the Echo, I'm seeing lots of pictures of like plants and what I had for lunch 6 years ago. I would love to suppress those. And so that's what, long story short, Google Photos is giving users more control over that. So that looks kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, I've got some people that were very sad when memories would come up of a funeral or something that. Sometimes those are important to go back and remember and see who was there and what people were able to be there, and brings back good memories. But for some people, it brings back very painful memories.
Some people would want to see that intentionally. I want to go look at that, not have it come up unexpected, and it kind of can be a shock to get. I get that. And then a couple other things that Android will do. They're adding a remote control app for Chromecast, which is just like the remote controller app for the Apple TV that Apple has, and the digital car key, which Apple added to iOS last year. I don't feel like it's copying. What that says to me is if Android and iOS have digital car keys, it means the car manufacturers will get on board as long as these things are interoperable.
It's good for competition and growth in this kind of technology, and it's going to force them to be more secure and just keep innovating. And yeah, if both of them are doing it, they're gonna make it better and better and better.
And it's less likely they'll drop it, like Google has a tendency to do of something even good. If Apple's still doing it, they're probably not going to drop it.
That's right. Awesome. So that was Google I/O. Some interesting stuff. And like I said earlier, Apple's got their big software announcement, the WWDC, Worldwide Developer Conference, coming up on early June 6th or 7th. I forget what it is. And we'll of course talk about that when that comes. All right, some other headlines. I think, Pat, you were the one who brought this one to my attention about this guy. This is fantastic. So it's obviously an Oculus Quest story because Pat brought it to my attention. Pat loves the Oculus Quest. We've learned that. And what this guy has done is inside the virtual reality space, he has built a Commodore 64. Not just like, oh, look, it's a cute model of a Commodore 64. It's an operational Commodore 64. You can insert discs into it with programs that run on it. I mean, this is amazing. This guy has done this. And all I can say is I want an Apple II version of that. I want my old Apple II back. But this is pretty wild. I don't know anybody who's used it. But what do you think of this?
I think it's great what people are able to do with their imaginations to bring the real life into an imaginary space like that. For instance, recently there was also a port of a pinball machine into VR, where you actually, you're hitting the sides and you're punching the buttons and you're pulling and I'll have to admit, I never did that when I was a kid. But things like this give people access to technology or things that were in the past in a way you couldn't do it very easily in real life.
That's true. There aren't a lot of Commodore 64s out there for people to play with.
It would, that'd be a fun thing for a grandparent to show their grandkid. That, I mean, and it. I think did you watch the video that he had with it?
Yeah.
So like you can turn off the fast loading things and you can make it just act like it would have, so it would be a fun thing to do for your kids or grandkids, but also just, I love the nostalgia of it. So the Commodore 64 was before my time, but I still I love that idea. And then through that video, he's built this virtual space for it. And I was super interested. Yeah. Like the DeLorean from Back to the Future is outside the window, and he's got like a Star Wars poster and the Enterprise D hanging from the ceiling. And like it is a total 80s geek kind of room, which was really fantastic. And
it's like a Ready Player One. It was awesome.
Oh, totally.
I mean, I tell you, if I could go, this is a sort of a parallel to this. If I could go and walk around in Boston in 1942 with my grandfather, my grandfather's world, when my dad was a kid, my dad was, in 1942 was like 10, if I could walk around and experience their world. And that's sort of what this is this could let young people experience what their parents, like my age, would have had and used. I mean, I would love for my kids to be able to see, this is what Apple II, like I could probably download an Apple II emulator off of the Internet Archive and they could play it on my Mac. And it's not quite the same thing, though. And I would love for them to be able to experience that. So good on him. This is great.
And with technology changing so much, I mean, you wait 10 years. And I mean, the technology from 10 years ago is obsolete. Oh, yeah. And I mean, like it's changing so quickly that this is a cool way to kind of go back and revisit those kind of things.
And it's a way of kind of like it becomes almost a museum of things that you can do. And we've talked about that on the earlier thing, that sometimes people will make a museum out of virtual objects. Well, this is making a museum in virtual space of real objects.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I think a forward-thinking like the Boston Computer Museum could totally take something like this and create the ability for people to sit in virtual space and look at these old computers in the environments that they were. And I can't imagine, in 5 or 10 years, how real it will seem and how cool that will be. So I'm looking forward to that. But
it's exciting.
Yeah, this is great. All right, from the utopian future to the dystopian present, we should talk about this next headline. This is a CNN story about this. It's basically an open source. It's not open source. Let me amend that. A publicly accessible facial recognition tool. Now, most facial recognition tools that are out there that we've talked about, like Clearview AI, are private. You have to pay big bucks, and only Clearview is only accessible to law enforcement. Is what we're told. But what they do is they scrape the internet for photos, and then they can compare. Like a policeman can compare a photo that they have of a suspect against the database and try to come up with a identity. And we've talked about the problems with that and how facial recognition technology isn't good about identifying minority facial features, and is really bad at that, and just all the kinds of privacy problems. So there's this other software, the site called PIM Eyes, that is accessible to anyone. And you can use it for free in its basic features. And I tried this out. And yeah, I uploaded my photo, my profile photo to it that I usually use. And I found a bunch of photos of me, all my profile photo places, but other photos of me. And then it was like, and then here's other ones that may be of you. And there was like dozens of big guys with beards and dark hair. It was kind of amusing, actually, how many guys that kind of look like me there are out there. No, it was a little amusing. Now, apparently, if you pay a little extra, you can get better results. And the thing they worry about is this makes it accessible to people for stalking. Like if
that's a worry.
If I'm a creepy dude and I see a pretty girl in public, I can take a picture of her face and then upload it and find out who she is. It's not that hard. Like they don't tell you, here's a picture of so-and-so, but it's not that hard to go from the image they show you to a Google image search and finding her profile or where that photo came from. I mean, it's if someone knows how to use PimEyes, they know how to get more information. Or, if a potential employer doing deep searches of potential employees and all kinds of things. What do you guys think of this? Is this kind of shady? I should also add that the owners of this are pretty shadowy. It's actually. It's in the, I think the Seychelles is the corporate the where it's registered as a corporation, which makes it sound like it may be under a shell corporation, and maybe the actual company is in Poland, but no one's quite sure. It's very, very shady.
I would be very uncomfortable with it, but I don't know if there's a way that you can say, well, let's make it illegal because, it's just photographic, and matching stuff. And so, but yeah, I can see, especially on the stalking thing. And also misidentification is just as big a problem on that, even if somebody says, oh, I'm mad at this person who was at this demonstration, I'm going to get them. They go and pick up and get the wrong person.
Right. That's
whether they get the
already.
right person or right person or wrong person. Identity can be a real big problem. And so I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't know of any way to prevent it with free speech and access to public information, because your phone number, address, all those things are in public databases, and so it's already out of the bag.
And I think it needs to be pointed out too that we are willingly giving up some of our privacy by using the internet. And I mean, so like I put my own photo in there and a bunch of pictures came up as well, but all of them were photos that I posted either to my website or to Facebook or wherever. So, I'm responsible for the reason that those photos are up there. And of course, all of them that are up there are perfectly fine. I have no problem with them being out there. But, if we're really concerned about this, we should be not uploading photos of ourselves.
Right.
Well, and there are a lot of people that say, my life is public, and that's already too late. We can't expect privacy, and I have to behave the best I can because I am a public entity.
I think the bigger concern and the valid concern is the one about misidentification, and that's one that is really tricky because, like, I could be doing everything right. I could have no pictures online, but if someone misidentifies, if there's a facial recognition mismatch and comes up with my information somehow, that is concerning. Or if I don't get a job because someone thinks, oh, you're that guy, that's not me, I didn't do that. That's concerning. But we'll have to. This
kind of goes along with the deep fake stuff. That it may not be you, but all of a sudden you're targeted and you're banned or you're turned down, and you've got this bad reputation, and it's really hard to get it back again after something like that happens.
Right. That's where we've talked in recent weeks about these efforts to have sort of NFT identification or blockchain based
blockchain identification,
where your identity can't be faked and you can assert this is me and that's not me. It's kind of complicated. I'm not sure I understand all of the technicalities, but hopefully we'll advance in that area as well as this, because it's such a need. Right, let's talk about our last headline before we get to our picks. This is, again, another story that we've recently been talking about, the Colonial Pipeline. Everybody has heard about that. It's this pipeline that provided something like 60% of the oil on the East Coast. It transports oil and gas up and down the coast. It was shut down due to a ransomware attack, and there were these huge gas shortages. It was like back in 1977 again, sitting in gas lines, people putting gasoline in plastic bags in their trunks. It was horrible. It was a whole bad thing. And we were told, oh, it's because it was hit with ransomware and it shut down the infrastructure, and our infrastructure. And we were talking about this. Our infrastructure is vulnerable. Well, it turns out not quite the whole story. What happened is that the ransomware didn't hit the control systems for the pipeline. It never hit anything that actually is vital to the operation of the pipeline. What got hit with ransomware was their billing system. And because they were worried that they couldn't accurately bill for the oil that they were transporting and selling, they shut it down. Now, I mean, I guess I could see where they would say, "Look, our company lives off of the ability to bill for what we're shipping, and if we can't bill for it, our company's going to shut down." But yet, we sent our country into chaos, or a big part of our country into chaos for that. So, interesting to see that it's the tertiary effects of this. And I think maybe that's what surprised those ransomware hackers who got all worried that they were being seen as attacking America's infrastructure when they thought they were just hitting a billing system. What do you all think of this?
Again, they shouldn't be doing that. But on the other hand, they were not as nefarious as a lot of the ransomware is out there. And I understand that. And in fact, I understand that they even apologized that they weren't really trying to disrupt society, and this was something that was an unintended consequence.
Right.
But yeah, it still doesn't make it all right to do it.
Right.
And the pipeline company, still paid the ransom and still lost all those millions of dollars to pay the ransom anyway. So I mean, I guess they were looking at losing money either way.
Right. I'm gonna on a limb and wonder whether the U.S. government offered to reimburse this company if they would get things going back again, because it was that's based totally on speculation, but it would seem to me that it would be in the country's best interest to have this major pipeline not go down, and then maybe the NSA can track down where the money goes from there, and we'll take care of those guys.
They can end up in Guantanamo Bay. Or
we'll send Jason Bourne after them. Is Matt Damon available? But yeah, that's it. Well, I think I have the plot for the next Jason Bourne movie. It's ripped from the headlines. All right, so those are our headlines this week. So let's move on and talk about our picks of the week. Pat, let's go with you first. What do you have for a pick this week?
Well, you did say that I like the Quest just a little bit. So since I've been using my Quest, I've got a couple of areas that I can work out in, and one of them's pretty small. And there is that danger of when you're flailing your arms around like a Roadrunner or a
Jedi.
Yeah, yes. Or Bugs Bunny, that you could encounter some hazards. And I have. I had a big bruise on my arm for a while. So what I found was something that would help me keep centered on a small space. There's a whole bunch of different sizes, but they have several features. One is that there are textured things that you can feel with your feet. If you're in socks or barefoot, you can tell where you are and what direction you're standing in. And some of them are perfectly circular, and so at least it keeps you on that space. But this one actually has a different front than it does a back, and so I can tell immediately which direction I'm looking at or I'm pointed at. And as well, it's got a fatigue type anti-fatigue cushioning on it. And so I can be in that smaller space and not be worried about hitting something, as well as my feet aren't getting, potentially they wouldn't get as tired when I'm standing for a while. And so that was my pick of the week and it's one that rolls up and you can stick in your suitcase. So,
oh, nice. So you can take it on the go.
That's right. And I did. On my last trip, I took it with me to Las Vegas and found a space in my brother's living room that I didn't hit anybody. And they could laugh at me.
Oh, let me tell you, the first time you bowl in, what's the
Scramble Sports?
Yeah, and you hit your wrist against the desk in front of you.
I did that too.
Oh, yes, that was. Ouch.
Yeah, mine was a coffee table, but yes, I had knuckles that complained a little bit.
There are a ton of videos online of people, in their living rooms freaking out and then running into their big screen TV and smashing it to bits. And this is a good pick. I like this. That's a good idea. All right, Father Andrew, what's your pick this week?
Well, since we decided to talk Google, I wanted to go with the Google product, and I'm surprised that this has not been a pick yet on this show.
Me too.
I searched through our list. So my pick is Google Voice. So not at all a new thing from Google, but it's actually been around for quite a while. But Google Voice is a free service. All you need is a Google account, and it gives you a secondary phone number that you can call from, you can text from. It'll get voicemails. It'll transcribe voicemails. You can link it to your cell phone number. So, in fact, there's an app for iOS and Android that you can have that, if I want to make a phone call from my Google Voice number and not my personal cell phone number, I go through the app and it basically calls my phone, and then from there it kind of links me to whoever I'm calling. So it basically gives you a completely separate phone number for calling, for texting, for voicemail. It can be helpful if you want to give your number out, but you want to keep your personal cell phone private. What I actually use it for here is I use it as the emergency number. So if someone calls into the office outside of hours, that cell phone number is there in case of emergencies for sacraments. And so when someone can call that number and it calls my cell phone rather than giving out my personal cell phone for all to hear. So free and really, really fantastic. So that is my pick this week.
Let me tell you, I've had a Google Voice number since it was called Grand Central before Google bought it.
Wow.
And I've never, in our married life, Melanie and I have never had a landline. We've always had a Google Voice number and then our cell phone numbers. And for the longest time, I actually had this device, and they still sell them, called from Obihai. It's called Obihai. I'll put it in a link in the show notes, which you can hook up. You can direct the Google Voice number to it and hook up a regular phone to, like a desk phone to it.
So like a VoIP number.
It's a VoIP number. Yeah, exactly. And you can even port your current landline to it if you want, and to Google Voice. One of my favorite features is if you want to block a spammy caller, like just someone, if not just like a random caller, but there's a specific number that keeps calling you, and you're like, I don't want this person to even know that I'm alive anymore. You can not just block them, you can have it tell them that this number is no longer in service. Yeah, I love that feature. But I
think,
it's great.
And I haven't played with it recently, but I think you can also set up voicemails for specific numbers. So, like, depending on who calls, they would hear one thing versus another.
Yes,
I remember that.
I have seen that. The other thing is I like about it is that you can say it's forwarded to your cell phone and this other phone, so that if something happens and your phone is no longer working, you can have it directed ad hoc to any phone number you want, which means that you never will lose calls. And yeah, that's my business. My business number is a Google Voice. Has been for about 5 or 6 years or however long it is.
People can even text the number,
yes,
and you can have it forward the text to save messages on your phone. So that's a great pick. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things about that is I don't lose my calls or texts because there's always a log of it on when I go into Google Voice, as well as I get an email from whether it's a text or a phone call. I get an email saying you have received a phone call or you've received a text. So I don't tend to lose things as easily.
That's right. And you can even download the messages from the web browser. Yeah, it is good. It's great. That's a great pick. I'm
glad
surprised
you brought that up. Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't thought of that before. That's good. So my pick this week, this is going to take a little explaining. It kind of goes along with my pick from last week, which was Obsidian, which is a personal knowledge manager software. This is called Hook. And let me try to simplify it as much as possible. Hook lets you make links, URLs to anything on your Mac. So if I have a file, I can do the command, Command Shift Space, and it'll bring up the Hook interface, and I'll say copy link, and it will come up with a link that I can copy anywhere on my Mac, and it will be hook : / and then this particular information, and then I can link to any file, any mail message, any Slack message. It works with a whole bunch of different Mac software out there, and you can link deeply into something. So let me tell you how I would use it. For example, if I have an email that comes in from someone and I want a task, I put something in my task manager. to do something about what this person sent me an email about, but I want to have a link back to that message. I just make a hook link to it, and then I copy that link into my task manager's notes. And so when that comes up, I can click the link and bring up the message for me. I could put it in my calendar, or I could put it in Evernote. And there's other features too. I mean, that's the basic feature. There's ways to have bidirectional links, so that both files, if I have a file on one side and I do the Command Shift spacebar, it brings up the hook interface and says, hey, there's a link from this file to this other file. And then if I do it on the other file, it will link back to it. So there's bidirectional linking. It's really cool. The guys behind this they're like these super geniuses who do they have PhDs in psychology and human brain interface, or I don't know, cognition, something very complicated that I didn't understand completely. But whatever it is, it's a really interesting piece of software that really fills a need, which is to be able to connect to things all over your computer and be able to find things a lot easier. I really like this feature. So it's called Hook for Mac OS, and it's at hookproductivity.com.
Someday, Dom, I want to just look at your computer and see what all of these random awesome programs that you use.
We might not recognize that it's a Mac.
Father Corey once challenged me to do all my picks for a while on all my menu bar utilities, and so I've been working through them. We're getting one by one through them. I am sometimes I'm amused at times about as I'm working, thinking, yeah, people would see what I'm doing here and wonder how. I have so much automation that helps me get shows out. There's no way SQPN could have. What do we have to 15 shows without the level of automation that I have in my Mac? It's really fantastic. And
I thought I was a programmer. You're much more programming than I am.
Yeah, actually, if you listen to the Mac Geek Gab podcast, I had a tip on there recently because it's one of my favorite podcasts. I get a lot of great ideas for this podcast from there. But they actually had one of my tips on there for iCloud syncing, and I'll just throw it out here, a little bonus at the end of the show. If I had problems with iCloud Drive not updating, I have occasion sometimes to have to download a file from my iPhone to iCloud Drive, and then what I want is for Hazel, which is a automation software, when a file shows up there, a particular kind of file shows up there, it automatically processes it and does something to it. But it wasn't happening. And so I found out that iCloud Drive wasn't syncing properly, which just wasn't downloading the file. But if I created a folder, blank empty folder in Drive, that it kicked the iCloud sync in the pants and got it working again, and the file would download. So I created a Keyboard Maestro macro, a little automation that creates every 90 minutes. It creates an empty folder and deletes it. And so it's just a way of kicking iCloud Drive in the pants. Yeah. And in fact, that's what I call it. I call iCloud in the pants. To make it sync. That's what I call it. Kick it. So yeah, it's actually it names the folder Kick iCloud. So yeah, so that's awesome. I mean, it's these little things that really makes the computer work the way you want, and so I have a lot of fun doing that. One of these days we'll have a whole episode where I talk about all my automations. That should be interesting. All right, I think that should do it for us for now, though. And so what do you think of our discussion? If you have any feedback on anything we talked about, whether it's on outdated OSs or Catholic Bibles for the Kindle or Google I.O. or anything else we talked about, you can send us your feedback at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And you'll find links from our discussion and our picks of the week in our show notes at sqpn.com. Remember to like each episode of Secrets of Tech, where you find it on Facebook, retweet it on Twitter at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we're at StarQuest Network, and leave comments wherever you find us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of technology.
Absolutely.
Pat Scott, thank you as well.
Until next time.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.